Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to discuss Vedic astrology with you, what it means for the world, how it's reflected in the world, and also how it affects you in your daily lives. And we'll be looking at a couple of topics that hit my attention this week. We'll look at the overall world map for this week, and we'll also look at the uh, meeting between Trump and Putin, and also uh, give an early assessment of the 2028 presidential election likely candidates. Now, keep in mind when I say likely candidates, there's a lot that could happen between now and the summer of 2028 when the candidates are finally picked. So we may not be looking at either of these two individuals at that particular point in time. However, um, it's just it's just going to be a brief examination. I don't think any more than 10 minutes. I'm going to try to keep it to. And like I said, just give first impressions, give the strengths, the weaknesses of each candidate, of each tentative candidate, and also the um, possibilities or the odds in favor of victory or defeat for each one. And there are very striking astrological similarities and differences between the two charts. So I think that's always interesting when you see two charts that seem to be relatively um, evenly matched. So without further ado, let's go into the week ahead. I'll try to pull that up right away. By the way, if you want to study with me or if you want to get an astrology reading, I can be contacted at 508 525 0001. Again, that's 508 525 0001. I can be texted at that address. You don't have to talk with me. Um, and you can also email me at garygomesg@gmail.com. Okay, so let's get on with it. So let me see if I can uh, pull the chart without. So I guess I'm screen sharing right now. I didn't mean to. Let me pull this back. All right, so we'll go with the now chart first, just to let you know where things are right now. It's been a particularly violent week, especially weather-wise, but also in terms of violence. There were some shootings in Georgia. If I recall, at the beginning of the week, there were more shootings in New York City. Uh, just uh, just earlier, I think just yesterday. And today is August 17th, by the way. And despite the fact that we have this Jupiter-Venus conjunction and Venus and Jupiter are right on top of each other almost, Mars and Saturn are still opposing each other. So that's going to make people a little bit jumpy. Also, Sun and K2 are in conjunction. Uh, this should lead to more demonstrations against authority figures, especially this month. This month is the month I've been waiting for to see people knocked out of office or seriously or dethroned, for lack of a better term. And I use for lack of a better term far too much. I realize that. But um, this combination, especially as the sun hits around the middle, around mid-September, hits K2 around mid-September, close to mid-September. I think you'll see a lot of political figures being upset. we're already seeing petitions going forward in Canada. As a matter of fact, it seems like almost all the Western provinces are having referendums to figure out whether or not they're going to separate from the Canadian government. Whether or not those can be honored, I don't know. Uh, Ottawa has, I believe, said it won't accept the results of those referenda. But nonetheless, it does introduce an interesting state of affairs in what had been a relatively um, I was going to say placid country, but there were actually uh, plebiscites on whether or not Quebec would secede from Canada. So it's not like but those are essentially language and cultural issues. I think in Quebec, these are what's hitting Canada right now are economic issues and political issues. So the western part of the country doesn't feel a lot of affinity for Ottawa, Toronto, in that part of the country. So it's sort of like the red-blue divide in the United States, but there are more um, but that particular region, Saskatchewan, and further west is essentially the mining center, the mining and some of the basically the mining center, uh, the heavy mineral production region of Canada, largely, and they've been supporting, at least according to what I've heard, they've been being taxed disproportionately to support Toronto and Montreal and the large cities, Vancouver's in the western part of the country, obviously, but the eastern side, and so they're and without getting commensurate benefits on their side. So I think that's a real economic problem they're having. There's a political disagreement with whether or not Canada should move to a zero net uh, footprint, especially because that part of the country relies on mining and oil drilling and things like that. So it is a real economic issue for them, and economics essentially does tie into culture to a real large extent, whether we're willing to admit it or not. I mean, if you come in and say you want to interfere with my way of making a living, then you're imposing your cultural values upon mine, and that's problematic for a lot of people. But if we look at the chart right now, we have Jupiter and Venus in the ninth house, so there will be some general discussion. The other thing that's caught my attention lately has been the gerrymandering of districts. So essentially, this is also a Sun K2 conjunction phenomenon. Texas started it before the Sun and K2 were in conjunction, but now California has passed, um, is in the process of passing, or possibly passing, likely pass, um, a a gerrymandering of its districts to show a net loss of 9 Republican seats. But this could also spread to other parts of the country, like um, I think Indiana, Missouri, and there was one other, Ohio, I think, was the other state named uh, in the gerrymandering scheme. I think South Carolina was named too, if I'm not mistaken. But those are seats where the Republicans could pick up. Those are areas where the Republicans could pick up seats. Outside of California, it doesn't seem like there are a lot of places where the Democrats could pick up seats. New York is. largely Democratic. There are only a couple of Republican representatives, I think, from New York State. There are, I believe, none in Massachusetts, so that would be almost impossible to gerrymander in Massachusetts. Um, and so, and so this is part of the strategy behind the scenes you have to pay attention to when you're looking at the elections and how policies can change and how strategies can change. And it's not unique to the Republicans. The term gerrymandering actually came from a Democratic politician. So the origin of the term it was ascribed to a Democratic politician. So and both parties have used this to a greater or lesser extent. It's become a kind of a big issue for the United States, mainly because it's happening. Normally, the attempt to redistrict comes pretty quickly after the census. The 2020 census was a bit of a mess, if we're honest about it. They did the best they could under the circumstances, but it was still a bit of a mess. And I think overall, we're going to see a lot more of this kind of activity over the next few months. The Jupiter-Venus conjunction indicates there's a lot of idealism connected with government right now. Mercury's direct right now is in Cancer. That's another governmental sign. These three houses, these three signs are largely connected with government. So that's Gemini, that's communications, Cancer, and Leo. So Leo and Cancer are the king and queen of the zodiac. These signs are considered to be the young prince of the zodiac, the heir apparent. Okay, so we have this combination right here, and Saturn over here. The signs ruled by Saturn tend to represent the people. This is the intelligentsia or the intellectual class or the diplomatic or warrior class. And this is the spiritual class, but also it can be academics. This is the army or the commander-in-chief of the army, and this is essentially the merchant caste. This is the signs ruled by Venus, and it's the minister of the interior, to use K.M. Rao's expression. So, so this is the Minister of the Interior, this is the Army, this is the State Department over here, and these are the common folk. Basically you and I and whoever wants to identify with the common folk, even if they're not common folk. All right, so, so essentially what's happening among the common folk right now is there's a great deal of dissatisfaction, and that's mainly because of Saturn entering this sign, Pisces, which disperses people, makes them angry at each other. That anger will last for at least another good 2 months because Mars is aspecting Saturn. And confusion over direction of the country is going to last for about another year and a half, mainly because Rahu's interfering with the United States moon chart. So this will open the United States up to scandals, and it will also affect technology. So we're going to see a big technological rush over the next year or so, which I'm actually all in favor of. And also, I would say an increase of artificial intelligence, which um, I think the threat is a bit overblown, if I'm honest with you, but I am a little bit um, frightened of the implications. Um, and there was one comment that was made in a story uh, in a newsman who had covered Gavin Newsom, which is why I'm looking at the charts, because I think Gavin Newsom, right now at this stage, is the presumptive nominee of the Democrats. And he was saying he realized when he was in the recall that all politics wasn't local, it was national. And the last time we were at this kind of obvious juncture was in the late 1960s, early 1970s, when essentially we were involved in a war that we seemed mired in. We were involved in a series of conflicts which didn't seem to have any resolution, so Vietnam, Cambodia. And there was also a great deal of protest going on about those particular areas of the world. So we had, and also a lot of university unrest and demonstrations and a lot of civil rights unrest as well. So that conjunction I spoke about that happened earlier this year, it won't go away quickly, okay? It won't have as lasting an impact as the one between 1967 and 1970 because a lot of people thought um, the United States as a country was, um, even though it didn't show up in their daily lives, a lot of the press was very, um, or a lot of the common folk or the people who go to work for a living, come home every day, put their money in the bank and save up, they felt their values were being threatened in very obvious ways. So I think we're seeing something similar, although more short and more intense. And the Mars aspect on Saturn isn't helping that. Mars, it'll take a break for a couple of months, and then um, around November through January, Mars will aspect Rahu, which will give us another disruption of leadership. And then Mars will aspect Saturn, which will give us, I would say, a lot of demonstrations in 2026. So a, a lot of these things are, the planetary positions are changing, but they're going to produce similar results. In terms of the economy, I still don't see any kind of economic weakness until really late November. Um, and that's when Saturn goes direct, and there'll be some repaying of the bills, as it were. But basically, I'm just thinking that at least temporarily, and also for the next week, everybody's going to be a little bit short-tempered. Everybody's going to be a little bit tense, and there'll be more danger of earthquakes and other catastrophes, which we've seen over the past couple of months. And that'll continue on. That started actually during the early summertime. But that'll continue really, I think, until um, I would say roughly the end of mid-October. So again, brace yourselves. It's going to be bumpy over the next week. I'll look at your charts, signs individually. I just want to take a look at. So the things to be careful about: impatience. Don't be impatient. Don't be overly optimistic. You can be optimistic. I don't think there's anything wrong in thinking you have limitless possibilities, but don't over commit yourself because as soon as Venus enters Cancer, you'll realize the commitments you have to your home and your family. And the other thing is, at least from the chart, you'll have this war issue will continue to go on over the next few months. So essentially, so a lot of the protests around wars are based around not Ukraine but Israel. And I've had personal misgivings at various times about the United States um, in Israel, actually since the 1970s. Um, but I don't necessarily think that that means we should um, abandon them. It's not, they're different things. And I don't know. So I see a lot of news. I see a lot of stories on TV. Um, in terms of Israel and Gaza, I'm not going to render an opinion because, again, like I said, I'm just so confused by what I see. I can't make a good judgment on it. So it, I'm not copying out. I'm just saying I really don't know enough about what's really happening on the ground in order to make a good judgment. And uh, I, I actually just saw that the other day, and I just said to myself, you know what? I'm not going to put myself in the middle of something I know next to nothing about. So so let's go over here to, and I have nothing against anybody. I'm a very neutral person. Okay. So let's look at let's see if we can look at the Peace Accord, or not the Peace Accords. It's a little bit premature, right? Uh, Let me see if I can get it. I don't want the alphabetical, I want the chronological. There we are, Trump Putin meeting. Whoops, sorry. Okay, so the meeting was supposed to start at 11 a.m., and I took that time as being the start of the meeting. So we have, okay, so this war is going to continue. Okay. Um, Basically, and the reason I'm saying that is because Mars is in the first house. The discussion, the the meeting itself was about war. It was about land, really, if we want to be objective about it, because Mars is in the first house. Mars is the planet which is connected with land most intimately. Mercury is as well, but only secondarily. And the Lord of the first house is in the 11th house, along with the sun. And it does look to me, so Trump agreed to, there's one district um, of Ukraine that Russia wants to keep in order to agree to a ceasefire and to a ceasing of advancement in Ukraine, which seems to be like, well, we'll stop bombing you for now, but we reserve the right to take it up later on. Which I'm not making. I'm not making light of it. It just seems like a kind of a. It's not really a big give, you know, um, on Russia's part. And if we're looking about the people who were not at the meeting, so Zelensky wasn't at the meeting, he's obviously going to oppose the Saturn's in the seventh house. Um, Trump is trying to act as the negotiator in this particular situation. That's what he's trying to do. So whether or not that's smart on his part or stupid on his part, I can't say. I'm not, history is going to judge that, not me. But at the one point that is good, so we have a malefic in the first house, so we were going to pick this for a horary or a Prajna chart. We probably wouldn't have picked this particular time, but it's already done, it's already happened. So let's see how it works out. The only optimistic thing I can see from this chart is we have Jupiter and Venus in the 10th house, which does indicate some movement, some progress towards peace, because Jupiter and Venus in the 10th are benefic planets. It's a benefic placement. It does indicate some positivity, and Jupiter's aspecting the second house, so the talks will be uh, agreeable. Well, so if we're looking at the parties to the talk, we would look at the first house, and it's Mars and Mercury. And we want to look at the moon, which is in the eighth house. So the eighth house moon, somebody else mentioned this online. I just spotted it when I was looking up the time. The eighth house moon isn't very good, which is true. So there's some machinations going on behind the scenes, but but basic but basically the sun in the 11th house indicates to me indicates long term the negotiations will be agreeable. But I think overall, yeah, there will be a lot of resistance, especially from Ukraine, uh, towards giving up any land. That's not. And I'm not saying I blame them. I understand that, but Saturn's aspecting the ninth house. The ninth house lord is in the first. It looks like they're going to be compelled to give up some land, whether peacefully or through continued efforts. Now, keep something in mind. This war is costing both sides a lot of money, and there is a lot of loss of life here. So I'm thinking that just because Saturn is retrograde until November 24th, so this isn't a big shift in the position that I had last week, because Saturn's retrograde until November 24th or 25th, that I don't think you'll see a peace resolution until at least that time. And I'm not saying who's right or who's wrong. That's not for me to determine from the astrology chart. Um, Clearly, Putin invaded Ukraine, all right? And I understand some of the motivations for that, but also the Mahadishas, which is difficult to look at um, for this kind of a chart. The Mahadishas would indicate a final peace resolution next August, in which it looks like Putin will get what he wants. But that's my interpretation. That doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. So when you're looking at charts, you're not assessing, at least from my perspective, you're not assessing the morality or immorality of either party's position. You're assessing what the charts say is going to happen. Um, K2 in the 12th is loss. It's loss of, and either one or both leaders will lose their jobs as a result of this. I'm not talking about Trump. I'm talking about Ukraine and Russia. Okay, so I wouldn't be surprised to see um, about a year from now both leaders gone. Um, but we'll see what happens. But again, this Rahu in the sixth house, not really an indication of compromise. It'll take a few more months at least before a tentative agreement is reached, and maybe until next year, August of next year, before a final agreement is reached. And so this chart wasn't a good chart. I wouldn't have chosen this chart. I wouldn't have recommended meeting in this particular chart. Um, the nakshatra is Bharani, which is a nakshatra connected with death. So that to me indicates that the killing will continue for a while, unfortunately. So I wish it were earlier than this chart indicates. So let's go to Gavin Newsom, who I mentioned earlier. And I was interested because somebody had made a comment that Newsom was essentially declaring his candidacy with this event on Friday. And so this is his chart. So this is a pretty good chart. He's got Jupiter and Venus, or it's actually a very good chart. He's got Jupiter and Venus in the first house, in the house of, in the sign of Kings. Uh, Jupiter is a good planet for this rising sign. Venus is not. Okay. So there's a little bit of a tug between doing the right thing and being honest and doing the political thing. Okay. So that's true of every politician. He has a Mercury K2 conjunction in his chart. Very adept at making up stories. Very adept at. So again, it's a politician's combination. I'm not judging it. Sun's in the second house. He's a very handsome man. I can say that without um, fear of contradiction, although he does look a little bit. Um, I'll say my personal opinion. He looks a little too perfect to me. That may sound like jealousy, but it's not. It's just, so, so, but again, that's the Jupiter Venus sun in this particular sign. But again, um, he really does. I hate to say it, but every politician makes up stories, but Newsom's very adept at making up stories. Um, and that's the Mercury K2 conjunction. He can make up things out of whole cloth. As a matter of fact, it's easier for him to make up a story than it is for him to tell the truth. Despite we have two, despite having two truthful planets in the first house. Mars is in the fourth. That's not a good position for marriage. He was divorced, I'm sorry, married and divorced. Um, but it's not in a bad sign. Mars is in Scorpio. It's kind of close. Jayeshta is in Jayeshta Nakshatra, which is a very smart nakshatra. Um, Moon is in Sagittarius. It's in one of the better, he's in Purvashada Nakshatra, which is one of the better nakshatras in Sagittarius. But he's got Saturn in the eighth, which can be difficult for a person um, wanting to hold the highest office. It's There's an axiom in Vedic astrology that Saturn has to be positioned well in a chart for the person to be a leader of a village. It is in the fourth house from his moon. Um, Trump's is in the 10th house from his moon, which is more in line with a person being a leader or being elected a leader. And I often look at Saturn for the likelihood of success in elected politics. Rahu is in the ninth. Rahu is direct, so his Rahu is extremely well placed. And Venus is in the 10th house, so his career is somewhat blessed because of that Jupiter-Venus conjunction. But it will be tried at times. Jupiter's in Jupiter, I'm sorry, Mercury's the Lord of the 11th house. He'll have friends who are dishonest, at least from this chart. And finally, 12th house Lord is Moon. Moon is the Lord of the fifth house. Moon is placed in the fifth house, the house of politics. So he does have political judgments, but this doesn't bode well for victories in large races. But it doesn't mean it's impossible either. Okay, so it depends on what Mahadasha, the United States, is coming through right now. And right now, up until October 26th of 2025, Newsom is riding kind of high because he has this Rahu subperiod. And the Jupiter subperiod up until December looks pretty good for him. We'll see how he does after December. December of this year looks to be a difficult subperiod for him. Okay, so he may take a bit of a fall or a bit of a decline during this time. If we're looking at 2026, Mars hits this particular sign. And so this sort of corresponds with him building a power base. And he enters a Rahu Mahadasha in um, September of 2027, and that goes all the way through October, all the way through the election cycle. Now, this is important to keep in mind for this particular chart. He'll be in a Jupiter Rahu Mercury subperiod during this particular time. Mercury is the lord of his house of victories, but that K2 can steal victories away. Okay, so I'm not saying he is going to lose. I'm saying it's possible he can lose. Okay, and almost like through like a last minute upset. So let's look at Vance, who's the more likely, who's the most, right now, the most likely uh, candidate on the Democratic side, on the Republican side, excuse me. Sorry, folks. Album, okay. August 2nd, 1984. Another Leo rising, okay. Venus is in the 12th house, not particularly good for career, but Rahu's in the 10th house. That is good for assuming political position. That's why he won the vice presidency in 2020, in 2024, was because Jupiter was going over that particular sign. Um, Mercury as Lord of the 11th and second house, and Moon as in this particular sign. This is a tougher moon, at least from what I can see, than Newsom's moon is. He's got a Mars-Saturn conjunction in Libra. So Saturn in Libra is a particularly strong position for attaining high office. It doesn't guarantee it by any stretch of the imagination. It's really it depends on what transits are happening, and we'll look at this more closely as the election draws nearer. Um, Kate, who's in the fourth house, he had problems with his mother. We know about this. This is, he had a very difficult family life. Jupiter's in the fifth in its own sign, which is more auspicious politically than, honestly, than Newsom's chart is. So I'm not saying he's going to beat Newsom. I'm just saying the luck is a little bit better for political success. Let me just see now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Seventh house Lord is Saturn, is exalted along with Mars in the second house. And Vance is known for being kind of, he's a very straightforward communicator. He's far more articulate than Trump is. I think even his worst critics might grant him that. That doesn't necessarily mean you like what he says, but he's far more articulate. And he's also got Jupiter in an angle to the moon, which is a Gajashri yoga, which makes him likable to a lot of people. The Jupiter is retrograde, though, which is a little bit of a problem so it can give some political setbacks in the fifth house. Rahu in the 10th is a very powerful position for gaining government office. Um, Rahu in the ninth gives luck. Rahu in the 10th gives success. So right now he's in Saturn Mahadasha. Saturn. He'll be in a Saturn Mercury Mahadasha when the election comes. And October 24th, he'll be in a Saturn Mercury Rahu subperiod. So if it's these two people running, and it depends, so I'm going to modify this based upon as we get closer to the election, and it calms down a little bit, and we get a clearer idea of who's going to be running. This gives, to me, this gives him a slight edge over over Newsom, excuse me. Now, again, this could be just my interpretation. You feel free to disagree with me. That's fine. I'm not talking politically, I'm talking astrologically. Mercury is a very um, fickle planet. So you really can't trust results during Mercury subperiods. So it will tend to shift and ebb and flow uh, based upon um, based upon where Mercury is in the chart at the time of the election, and I haven't looked at that yet. But based upon the strengths, both the deficits and surpluses, the charts appear to be equally matched, although Newsom has a more obvious advantage because of Jupiter Venus being in the first house. But that doesn't guarantee success. It's very lucky, but it doesn't guarantee success. Rahu in the 10th is more credible for victory. Venus being in the 12th, it can steal that away. That's a problem for him. But Trump had that position too. So again, it's going to depend on where the planets are at that particular time. But like I said, I think these charts are pretty evenly matched. Right now, Vance is in a Venus subperiod, so he's a little bit behind the scenery, not really out front so much. And that'll probably continue until January of 2026. His moon subperiod will see him in public, moon Mars, Rahu subperiod. We'll see him in public, which makes sense because he'll probably be campaigning uh, for the 2026 elections. But right now he's a little bit behind the scenes because that Venus Sun uh, subperiod. Okay, so let's go back to your charts, to a now chart right now. So that's just my quick and dirty take. I don't think it's guaranteed that either one will win. The U.S. chart is kind of we're in a Rahu Mahadasha, so we're going to see these flips in orientation throughout the entire Rahu Mahadasha. And that really doesn't end until around 2033 to 2034. So I think that I wouldn't be incredibly surprised if either one won at this particular point. But again, like I said, the Jupiter-Venus conjunction in Newsom's chart is very lucky, but so is the Mercury in the first house and the um trying to think. Although Vance's sun isn't as strong as Trump's sun is. So that's something where he loses some points, but his moon is much stronger than Trump's moon is. And his Saturn is much stronger than Trump's Saturn is. So, and it's much stronger than um, Newsom's Saturn is. So Saturn tends to be, Jupiter gives opportunity, but Saturn gives leadership. And it's possible you may even see um, Vance assume the presidency before Trump's second term is out. So I'll go into that a little bit more next week. Um, the current chart right now, so I was talking about this chart before. For Aries, this is sign by sign. For Aries, we have um, moons in the second house. That's actually pretty good. Moon is exalted. It's in its exalted sign, so that should give more peace at home, more general optimism, maybe a little bit of over optimism because of the Jupiter Venus conjunction in the third house. So be careful, but also more of The sun is itself is in its own sign, but it's with Ketu. So that tends to give a kind of a Raj Yoga phenomenon, which I've spoken about before, and that it can give unexpected wins um, to people. So this is why I think Trump's chart actually shows some good wins over the next few months. But I'm digressing back into the presidency, and it's mainly because of the Sun K2 conjunction. My apologies. But this Sun K2 conjunction can give some problems with some turnarounds with kids. Kids will start to act a little bit better, a little bit more responsibly. They'll start to side with you rather than against you, so that'll be good. Mars is in the sixth house, so that's a good placement for being able to overcome enemies or obstacles, although the sign is a little prone to illness this month. Um, Venus is Lord of the seventh house. It's in the third house. It's in the third house with Jupiter. So relationship partners will be very enthusiastic or very lucky this month. And finally, Rahu is in the ninth. Is in the 11th house. Excuse me. And Saturn's in the 12th house. So again, maybe trying to impress the neighbors too much or your friends too much, leading to too many expenditures. So be careful about money. This is still the next 2 years, Aries is going to have to be really careful about money. For Taurus, so this is for April 15th to May 15th. For Taurus, Taurus has Moon in the first house, which is a very fortunate position. Venus and Jupiter in the second house, so that helps in terms of relationship life. Mercury's in the third house. Communications are good if a little bit overly diplomatic and sometimes a little bit devious. Sun and K2 are in the fourth house. There'll be a lot of attention paid to home life, especially in terms of dissatisfaction with the home or people wanting to make changes. This is May 15th to June 15th. The fifth house has Mars in it, so children will be a little bit unruly or a little bit defiant. Sixth house is not bad. Uh, Fewer enemies, fewer obstacles, fewer fights with a relationship partner. Seventh house is good for a relationship life. Relationship partner will have some of the same aspirations you will. Rahu, it gives a lot of dissatisfaction with work. This sign should expect this for the next 14 months or so, but don't make any quick jumps. Saturn's in the 11th house, good for financial gains, but only very slowly. For Gemini, Gemini has Jupiter and Venus in the first house. Generally a good time for marriage for this sign. Generally a good time for planning marriage or planning relationships. Mars is in the fourth house, though, so again, be careful you don't get involved with somebody who's just using you to get what they want. Mercury is in, now if you met the person prior to this, prior to, let's say, August 1st, that doesn't apply. But if you met them after August 1st, it does apply. Okay? So this is June 15th, July 15th. So good for communications, good for talk. Um, a bit less fear about the future, a sense of fearlessness, but again, it'll be a little bit tough on money. Mars in the fourth house, some difficulties with mothers and children and family life in general. Rahu's in the ninth house, some unexpected gains, some additional publicity, but work will seem slow moving, although you will have some charisma connected with work, and also a lot of attention paid to small animals, but expenses connected with those as well. That's for Gemini. For Cancer, Cancer has Mercury in the first house. This isn't a bad placement. It does give some excessive financial expenses, though, although there are some gains as well because Mars is over here, this house. But again, a lot of financial expenses, good ability to save, though, because of the Jupiter-Venus conjunction in the 12th house. Sun and K2 are in the second house. So again, some reversal in fortunes. You'll see some improvement in finances. Some family members actually starting to side with you rather than fight you. Um, Mars is in the third house, good for courage, good for achieving good results, especially through siblings. Fourth house Lord is Venus, Lord of the Fourth. Fourth is in the 12th, so there'll be expenses connected with property and family. Rahu's in the eighth house, so there will be some unexpected deceit behind the scenes, so you'll have to watch out for people um, behind the scenes kind of disrupting you or interfering with your progress. Saturn's in the ninth house, again, indicates slow but steady progress. And finally, career growth, but only with a great deal of effort. For Leo, Leo has Sun and K2 in the first house. As I said, for Leo, so this is August 15th through September 15th. Not a bad placement, does give some unexpected gains. People who had opposed you will now support you. And Mars is in the second house. This particular combination does indicate more of a willingness to fight or argue. And there's a tendency towards perfectionism, emphasis on perfectionism. Third house Lord is in the 11th house, strong desire for financial gain. Uh, Good ability to hold on to money if that's possible because Mercury's in the 12th house. And so there will be some financial gains from this chart and you'll be able to hold on to it. Rahu's in the 7th house, so relationship partner will attain some fame or recognition. Saturn's in the 8th house. Again, older or more conservative individuals will tend to fight you, or people um, who identify with downtrodden will try to fight you or argue with you. Moon is in the 10th house, so it does indicate some shift of luck in career, but very slowly. Venus is in the 11th house, along with Jupiter, good for financial gains. So let's look at Virgo. Virgo has Mars in the first house. Again, kind of difficult for relationship life. Um, you know, you'll probably stick with people you've known for a long time or people from a very different background or very different orientation. Not really a good time to get involved in new relationships, though, unless they're business related. Um, Venus is Lord of the second house, located in the 10th house, so career life should be better financially for you. It's going to depend on your major planetary period, your Mahadasha, as they call it in Jyotish. But Rahu's in the 6th house, and this indicates some short-term problems or dissatisfaction in workplace. Saturn's in the 7th. We've already spoken about this. Relationships, especially business relationships, will be a little bit tough, and you'll have a lot expected of you. Um, Moon's in the 9th. This is not a bad placement, so luck is actually changing a bit. And the moon will be with Jupiter and Venus tomorrow, so that's actually a good placement for starting new ventures or for completing things. Um, so if you've been holding off on buying something, tomorrow is a good time to do it. Or undertaking some new activity, a very auspicious time to do it. Um, Mercury's in the 11th house, good for gains, but Sun and K2, there can be some unexpected problems from taxes or from authority figures. For Libra, Libra has Mercury in the 10th house, good for communications for that sign. Jupiter and Venus are in the ninth house, excellent for financial growth. Moon is in the eighth house. I'm sorry, Moon is in the eighth house, that's right. So this can be an excellent time for reaching out and developing contacts or building foundations for things. Um, the Jupiter-Venus conjunction in the ninth house is extraordinarily lucky for this sign. Rahu being in the sixth and the fifth house, again, unorthodox ideas or new inventions start popping or start occurring to this particular sign a lot. Saturn in the sixth, um, it will seem like there's too much work to do, and people will expect too much of you, but that's okay. You can handle it. This, from my experience, is kind of a tough sign. So it may grouse and complain at first, but it'll get the job done. So basically, not a bad month for Libra. Again, not a good time for new relationships. Mars is activating Libra's 12th house, so it's making us a little bit more, making the sign a little bit more um, sexually interested than normal. And that'll continue on for another, I would say, 4 months or so. But again, not really a good time to start a new relationship until sometime, I would say, in January or February. Um, for No, this doesn't mean business relationships, but romantic relationships. So Libra, a good week for business, good week for commerce. Unexpected financial boons occur during the Sun K2 conjunction. Um, so overall, not bad. Good for communications, good for luck, good for learning, but not really great for new relationships. Scorpio has um, Kudanda, which is a sort of like a small Venus in the first house. Moon is in the seventh house. Good for relationship life. This is actually one of the better placements. But again, I advise you to go slowly and carefully. Jupiter and Venus are in the eighth house, makes this sign very attractive. Um, Rahu's in the fourth house, so that can make this sign a little bit disenchanted or displeased with its relationship life, or its home life. My apologies. And Saturn's in the fifth house. That will give slow growing but long lasting relationship opportunities. Saturn aspects the moon, so make sure you pick somebody who's compatible. Mercury's in the ninth house, good for communications. Sun and K2 can give career advancement. Mars in Virgo can give financial gains. For Sagittarius, Sagittarius has no planets in the first house, it has Jupiter and Venus in the seventh house. One of the few signs that actually has potential for romantic love this month. So this is, so Scorpio was, so Libra was October 15th through November 15th. Scorpio was November 15th through December 15th. And Sagittarius is December 15th through January 15th. So this sign actually looks good for financial growth. Some pressure at home, some some additional responsibility at home life, and some dissatisfaction with what one's achieved in life. But basically, this is a good chart layout. The moon is exalted in the sixth house, so there might be some short-term problems with women, especially in the workplace. But that should uh, modify by tomorrow. That should go away by tomorrow. And we have Mercury. Yeah, so this is a really nice combination. You have Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, and Moon, all benefics surrounding uh, not in the seventh house not in the seventh house from the moon, but in the seventh house from the rising sign, which is considered to be a kind of a Raj Yoga in Vedic astrology. So that's really lucky. This is a lucky month for Sagittarius. Sun and K2 are in the ninth house. You'll have to make your own pathway this month. And Mars sits in the 10th house. Very good for career success and career notoriety. For Capricorn, Capricorn is in Capricorn's Lord is in the third house, so it's good for if this sign wants to promote itself or be ambitious, but it will expect perfectionism from itself, which is a little bit difficult to pull off. But basically, this is a good month for career advancement. Moon is in uh, the this is January 15th to February 15th. Sorry, I forgot that. And Moon is in the fifth house, aspected by Saturn. Overall, not a bad placement. Good for financial gains, good for financial luck, especially to relationship partner. Jupiter and Venus, some opposition from higher ups or from people who want you to be nicer to them. Um, Mercury's in the seventh house. Relationship life gives a lot of opportunities, but none of them last. So I would avoid pursuing relationships and hoping that they have any long-term durability. They don't. Not this month. Let's see now. Sun and K2 are in the eighth house. That's somewhat bad for um, gains through stocks or things like that. Mars is better placed in the ninth house, good for financial gains through things like real estate and um, raw materials like oil. So overall, not a bad week for Capricorn, but again, you do have some enemies. For Aquarius, Aquarius has Mars in the eighth house. That's one of the first things I want to go for. So again, not a good month for Aquarius in terms of relationship life. Next, about 2 months from now will be much better. And Saturn is in the second house, so financially, this sign is kind of tight. Um, will be tight for the next couple of years, if I'm honest. And Moon is in the fourth house, so again, this is good for education, for learning. Jupiter and Venus, if this sign wants to run for political office or take a chance at getting a promotion, it's a good time to do it because it's basically a lucky time for this rising sign. Mercury's in the sixth, some difficulty with communications. Sun and K2 are in the seventh house. This isn't bad, but relationship partners will seem to be a little bit unhinged or difficult to deal with. Mars is in the eighth house, so that's a sure sign that it's not a good time for new relationships. For Pisces, finally, last but not least, Saturn's in the first house. We've seen this for a while now. It's going to be there for the next couple of years, so get used to it. So this sign will have a lot of pressure on it, um, a lot of expenses because of Rahu just fueling its desire for new things. Moon is in the third house, exalted, so some help or assistance from older brothers is indicated. Jupiter and Venus are in the fourth house. That's a good placement. And Mercury in the fifth. Not bad for short-term love affairs, but not good for long-term romantic entanglements. And also lucky in terms of communication. Sun and Kate were in the sixth house, some opposition from bosses or leaders. But overall, not a bad week for Pisces either. Again, you have to watch out for expenses. Too much, not necessarily status seeking, but just what I would call wasteful expenses for a lot of signs this month. Let's go to the time space chart and see how that does. So if I'm going to look at problems for the chart. Uh, well, um, there's a moon sign and a Rahu sign, so some potential for earthquakes off the coast of Alaska again, um, and some problems with weather, especially rain in Hawaii. Um, there's a Saturn and Mars line passing up through Western Canada, um, and so that can be difficult for that part of the Earth in terms of earthquakes or violent disruptions. Jupiter's in, and this entire section between, I watch out for the section essentially between um, Sacramento and California and this Mars line. And the main reason I'm saying that is because Jupiter can make this sign placement a little bit disruptive. It can give sudden upsets or setbacks in government. It can give unexpected luck, but it can also give sudden unexpected setbacks. And the Venus line can actually work against Jupiter because of it'll it's a benefic conjunction, no doubt, but I think oftentimes what it happens in world maps is people will get overambitious, overly excited, overly confident, and that can make an individual careless. And that's true of Colorado, of Nevada, Idaho, Washington State, Oregon, and California. Okay. Arizona, to a lesser extent. There's a Mercury line running right through the center of the country, right over Texas, and right over Mexico City. So there'll be increased communications, increased contact with individuals in Texas and the entire Midwest and um, up through the central part of Canada. This is the breadbasket of Canada right here. Um, there's a sun line running through Pennsylvania, Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and the sun line. Since the sun is with K2, we know there's a hurricane coming. That can actually indicate some destruction of property during this particular transit. Also in Cuba, and also possibly in Panama and um, Ecuador and Peru. We have a moon line running up through Peru, up through or near Venezuela into Guyana, and that could bring heavy rains to that part of the world. Uh, there's a Rahu line running through Nova Scotia, and it'll impact New England. So the entire East Coast you'll see basically riddled with scandals or um, accusations of corruption. This is true in Brazil. This is true in Paraguay, Uruguay, and to a lesser extent, Argentina as well. As we cross the Atlantic, there's a moon line running down all the way through down by Rio, down by Sao Paulo, and that essentially again it increases the potential for governmental scandals, for public scandals. We have a Mercury Jupiter line running up through Canary Islands and up through England into Sweden, and there's also a Venus line running up here surrounding Portugal and Spain and France. And this should give some short-term luck to those regions of the world in terms of, hopefully in terms of domestic peace. But um, Jupiter's also involved in Gemini, which can give a lot of sudden shifts in communication. So I would expect to see a lot of news out of these regions, out of France, out of England, out of Denmark. So the next important line is the Mercury line, which runs up through Italy, Switzerland, up through the eastern side. So I think what that line means is we're going to hear a lot from that part of the world. Um, doesn't mean it's negative. It just means they'll be in the news a lot. Same with it looks like Algeria. And same with um, I think this is Ghana. I'm not sure down here. Um, and the other line that's passing through right here is a sun line. So you will see switches in governments up through Central Africa, up through Libya, and up through Greece, and all the way up into Poland. Um, we have moon passing through Turkey and Greece and converging with all these lines up here um, near Iraq and excuse me, yeah, near Iraq and Iran. And I think that tends to indicate um, some problems in Saudi Arabia, some problems in Yemen, um, or continuing problems, especially because Mars joins the fight. But if I'm looking over here at this Rahu line, we're going to see government scandals in all the way from Ukraine all the way down through Israel, Turkey, Egypt, um, Eritrea, Ethiopia, all the way down to South Africa. The Mars line, some fighting is potentially expected in Iran. I hope that doesn't happen. Um, maybe some earthquakes, but again, that's only a possibility. For Jupiter, Jupiter's settling over Iran right now, and that's actually good. It should give them some financial luck. There's a Venus line passing over Pakistan and Afghanistan and going into central Russia. And there's a Mercury line, so there'll be increased communications. There's a Mercury line over India, so we're going through increased communications with these countries. Um, and the Mercury line also hits up into China, so we'll hear much more about China than we're used to hearing. Mercury line should be sort of like the central work line, so you'll definitely see this. Um, let me just see now. The so let's go over to the moon line. So this indicates heavy rains uh, and shifts in government in both China, uh, Myanmar, Cambodia, down into um, Indonesia. And you'll also see some governmental scandals happening in eastern China, Philippines, down into Indonesia and Western Australia. Finally, some economic slowdown in Japan, uh, Indonesia, and in Central Australia. And last but not least, you have a lot of Mercury, Jupiter, Venus lines going through um, New Zealand and also hitting, looks like the Solomon Islands, I think that is. So, so essentially, there'll be much more communications with our overseas units than normal. Okay, so let me just see now. Um, I hope that helped everyone. I hope everyone has a blessed week. I'm going to stop the share right now. And thank you all for watching. I love you all. I'd also like to remind you to subscribe, share, comment, and any way you can to spread the news out about this channel, please do. You might also want to check out a video I did earlier this week with my good friend Krishna Darshan, who just wrote a book on yoga, Ayurveda, and Vedic astrology and Jyotish. And he's a really spiritual guy. He's been um, involved in that community for decades. So he's really I feel super fortunate to know him as a friend, and so it's he's a really good guy. I encourage you to at least check out his book or buy it. It's more of a spiritual discourse than it is a how-to astrology, but it can also point to where in previous lifetimes certain karmas may lead you to have difficulties in this lifetime, and that can lead you to identify ways to correct those obstacles you're encountering in life. All right, so that's enough out of me. I love you all. Thank you very much for watching, and have a blessed week. Namaste. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye now. Any questions, any comments? Let me know if you'd like to make an appearance on the channel. I'd be more than happy to welcome you. Bye-bye now.